Hello, friends. How's it going? Do you mind if I call you friends? Making noise on my desk. Okay. Yes, oh yes. I'm gonna make up notes. Oh, it looks like an earthquake. Doesn't smell like one, though, so I think we're okay. Those weren't even notes, really. All right, let's do the roll call, shall we? John is here. Brian F., Bill K., Hank, Webb, Amy, Donna, Eugene, Roger, Frank, Gary, Chuck, Brian, and Matthew. Ready for action. The same joke every time. Red Fox and Greg Allman on Letterman. Were they appearing together? Or was it just one long episode? You can tell me later. Right now, we should probably do a show. So let's do that. What do you say? Have I hit record? Have I hit record? I have not. Now I have. All right. Phew. Let's do a thing. Share and shareholders alike. It is Tuesday, the 23rd of February, 2021, and this is macOS Can Live. I nearly made it 2023. Hi, everybody. Not like I have that kind of power. Anyway, hi, everybody. I'm Ken Ray, welcoming you to another edition of macOS Can Live, this thing we do Monday through Friday afternoon, 3:30 Pacific, 6:30 Eastern, other times, other places. And then it gets turned into an audio podcast. So if you're ever not here, you can always make it like you were here by downloading the thing and doing the thing. We're going to be talking about Apple's shareholders meeting today. Now, let me start by saying I wasn't there. In fact, if not for Webb, who is a regular participant in the live show, he was kind enough to send me an email yesterday. If not for Webb, I mean, I would have come across it in the news feed, but I totally forgot it was happening. For I am not an Apple shareholder. What Webb said to me in the email that he sent me yesterday was he didn't expect a lot of news out of the shareholders meeting. The way he sees it, you don't really want a lot of news out of a shareholders meeting. And he's right. I mean, there wasn't a lot of news. I also get why you would want not a lot of news because, you know, the people who show up at a shareholders meeting are shareholders. You kind of want them to be happy with how things are going. They get to, you know, ask a few questions, lob softballs, I would say. And then, you know, Tim Cook gets to knock them out of the park. That's really what the whole thing's about. I mean, that's not what the whole thing's about. There's some business that's done as well. We'll go over some of the questions and answers really quickly, just go over some of the business that was done. According to Apple Insider, Tim Cook says he's greatly optimistic about Apple's future. Well, we can just be done then, can't we? I think everybody can be fine. The CEO of the company says he's excited about the company. Snacks in the back. Except, of course, the holding was virtual, so they couldn't do that. They re-elected the board of directors. Well, they approved all the nominees. So that's James Bell, Tim Cook, Al Gore, Andrea Young, I want to say, Art Levinson, Ron Sugar, and Sue Wagner. There were 4 proposals up. Apple was in favor of 2 and against 2. And guess how the votes went? The passing proposals were the reappointment of Apple's public accounting firm for auditing purposes and the approval of Apple's executive compensation. The 2 failed proposals. That's not really fair. They made it that far. The 2 failed proposals, both submitted by shareholders focused on a pending proxy. Well, who cares? They didn't pass. Doesn't matter. What did Larry Bud Melman say? You know what the name for a second place person is? Loser. That's not really fair. I was actually a relative of mine who asked that question on Letterman. Sorry, somebody was talking about Letterman in the pre-show, and I'm a little sidetracked. I gotta say, props to, as I often do, Philip Elmer-DeWitt, Apple 3.0. Not the easiest site in the world to find. It is ped30.com. My assumption is because he couldn't get Apple 3.0. So PED for Philip Elmer-DeWitt, 30 for 3.0, because when he was at Fortune, he wrote Apple 2.0, that blog for a number of years. PED30.com. And the reason I say go there is because he does a lot of really neat in-depth stuff. Not in-depth. You see, that's not really fair. He pulls some really interesting stuff from places I don't have access to, and I appreciate him throwing the stuff up there. It was a friend of his blog, actually, that seems to have somehow captured the Q&A. I don't know if they were typing it. I don't know if they recorded it and ran it through some machine, translation, something or other. There were a few mistakes in it, but I've got the whole of the questions because this guy did his thing and sent it to that guy. So if you like to keep up with Apple financial stuff, because as much as I do that on Mac OS, I don't do everything that's out there. In fairness, neither does he. I've got stuff other places that he doesn't capture, but whatever. Apple 3.0, ped30.com. And now, having said that, we'll just go ahead and plunder what he put up. Question about is Apple on track to meet environmental standards and take the lead on the battle against climate change? This gave Tim Cook a lot of time to brag. We're just going to go with yes. That's what I was talking about with softball questions. And here's the thing. I mean, some things Apple has been we'll talk about the storytelling part of it later. Apple has really pegged itself almost as much, I would say, privacy and sustainability, environmental concerns are almost neck and neck as far as Apple is concerned. So to ask Apple a question like that, I mean, I guess he could have been falsely humble and said, no, 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 we still have a lot more to do. But he did say that they have a lot more to do. But, if you ask them, do you think you're doing okay on the environment? Oddly enough, they're going to say for right now, yes. Next question was on privacy. Why did you feel the need to speak out on privacy? And why did you feel now was the right time? Cook responded that he's always thought that the time to speak out is when you have something to say. We believe privacy is a fundamental human right, and we've always built into everything that we make from the ground up. We're constantly trying to move the ball forward on things like encryption on device and new health and wellness features that protect some of your most important data because we believe innovation and privacy go hand in hand. He did get into some nuts and bolts before switching back to the more aspirational, saying, we want to be the ripple in the pond that moves the whole industry forward, but we also know that these aren't always challenges that the private sector can address on its own. That's why we continue to support a comprehensive federal privacy law right here in the US, and why we support new worldwide laws and international agreements that protect the fundamental right to privacy everywhere. In the face with the five eyes. It's an interesting call. Kind of to that end, on political contributions, what is your policy on political contributions? Tim Cook said our policy on political contributions is a very simple one. We don't make them. We don't have a political action committee. We never have. We never will. Our approach to engagement now and always is about policy, not politics. I'll just leave that right there. On mergers and acquisition, the question is, are there any acquisitions in the future? Really? I mean, cool, but really? What was he going to say? What he did say, they made about 17 in the past year. It comes out to one every 3 to 4 weeks, which I feel like has been a stat that Apple has been trotting out for a number of years now, at least the past couple. Over the past 6 years, we've acquired nearly 100 companies. We're not afraid to look at acquisitions of any size, but our priority is on valuation and strategic fit. And our focus is generally going to be on small, innovative companies exploring technologies that complement our products and help push them forward. I wish somebody had gone a tiny bit deeper and asked, because isn't there proposed legislation now, or isn't there talk of proposed legislation? So proposal of proposal that you basically have to defend every acquisition you're going to make. The assumption is going to be that if Apple or Google or Facebook is looking to buy something, that it's automatically considered to be anti-competitive, and so they're gonna have to make the case for why buying that thing is a good idea without harming competition. Isn't competition about harming the competition? I know there's a difference between harming the competition and harming competition, but yeah, that's another thing for another thing. I wish that was a discussion they had gotten into, but that's not how these things are arranged. They're given a question, they answer the question. So there you go. The next one was on diversity and inclusion. How does Apple plan to improve its diversity and inclusion measures? He talked about work that Apple started last summer and then said, at the same time that we began this really significant racial equity and justice initiative externally, we're also undertaking an expansive company-wide effort to redouble our efforts internally as well, rooted in the principles of representation, inclusion, and accountability. All three of these are very important, and this is something that every team in the company has built an action plan on, up to and including senior leadership. Over the past year, these renewed efforts in inclusive hiring and employee development, including mentorship and career rotation programs, have yielded meaningful progress. During that time, 43% of open leadership positions in the US were filled by those from underrepresented communities, and globally, 37% of leadership positions are filled by women. I got into an interesting discussion that actually spanned a couple of episodes within a few minutes a few weeks ago with Allison Sheridan. I don't envy them the position that they're in because the discussion that Allison and I had, it feels like now when you watch the events that Apple is putting on, the virtual events like the Time Flies and High Speed and all that stuff, the people coming up to explain things, the people coming up to demonstrate things, it's not as uniformly white guy as it used to be. The problem that Allison is having is when she looks at um, Apple's executive page, it's still mostly white guys. I think that's going to change over the next few years. I think that will begin to change as other people leave, other people will come in. I believe they're actually raising people up through the company as they go, but I only believe it because they're saying it. Now they keep saying it, and then they throw out stats like these because generally speaking, Apple doesn't go outside for big hires, right? Deirdre O'Brien has been with Apple for over 30 years. Tim Cook has been with Apple for over 30 years. Gianandrea, or I don't know how you pronounce his last name, but the guy who's doing AI who came over from Google, he was a relatively recent hire. He came over from Google. I don't know. It's an interesting thing to keep an eye on, and I'm glad that they're, continuing to talk about it. Next question was about Apple TV Plus. So I'm going to talk about that here because if there's one thing I like to talk about, it's TV I don't have time to watch. Somebody wanted to know when they were going to release the movie Coda. Coda stands for Children of Deaf Adults. This is a movie that Apple bought, I want to say a month ago, maybe 2 months ago. I believe it was since the first of the year at one of the film festivals. It might have been at Sundance, actually, the virtual Sundance Festival, which would have been in January. Anyway, Tim Cook said he wasn't going to tell you when they're going to release the movie, but he has seen it and he really likes it. And then he talked about the stories they tell on Apple TV Plus. Our approach to Apple TV Plus from the very beginning has been to focus on telling stories that matter. We see streaming as an arena with room for several players. We want to stand apart by lifting up high-quality content that spotlights the humanity we hold in common in all of its creativity, vulnerability, and resilience. I think you can see there's strong response to that in a number of different ways, whether it's been incredible word of mouth spread for shows like Ted Lasso, or the remarkable run of more than 240 award nominations and 70 wins that we've had, or the mounting curiosity and enthusiasm for future content for the variety reference in the question. I like storytelling. That's why I kind of don't begrudge this whole Q&A thing. Webb was right. There's no news. There's no news in any of this. But it is a chance to tell the story that you want to tell. And it's sort of great. I haven't read the article. I don't know if I'm gonna read the article, but apparently the head of Spotify talked about how they're going to expand and how they're hoping to someday make it to profitability. How can they be as big as they are and not have made it to profitability? But there, that's his story. His story is how they're growing their business and how they're gonna be profitable. Now, if Apple was still struggling, if Apple was still striving for profitability, probably they wouldn't be talking about the kinds of stories that people should be telling. Probably they would be talking about how they're going to become profitable. Maybe it is, I can't think of the right word, but maybe there's, maybe the people who can tell the good stories are the people who don't have to worry about bad stories, with the exception of maybe government intervention. I don't know what's coming after Apple at this point. I mean, what could actually hurt Apple anyway? I'm not even saying that government intervention could hurt Apple, but it's a wild card. It's an unknown. Apple's in an enviable position of being able to tell those stories now in ways that they weren't necessarily when they were still in the red. Next question was about the App Store. Are you worried about regulation forcing a change in the App Store business model? He didn't really answer this question. Again, he just told the story. Let's take a step back here and consider a few facts. Apple doesn't have a dominant position in any market we compete in, not in any product category, not in any service category, not in software or apps. This competitive marketplace pushes all of us to be better. So while scrutiny is always fair, accusations like these fall apart after a reasonable examination of its facts. I love his faith. He goes on to say lots of things, but wrapping up at the end, as I said at the outset of the question, scrutiny is reasonable, but the facts point in a single direction here, that the App Store is innovative, dynamic, good for users, and its best days are still ahead of it. Which doesn't really, I mean, I skipped a bunch of stuff there because he threw in a lot of numbers. He talked about how much, Apple has paid out to developers. And I don't think anybody's denying that. He talked about the fact that they've introduced the small business program, and nobody is saying that that's a bad thing. The question that was asked was, are you worried about regulation forcing a change to the App Store business model? And the answer was, hey, have you heard how great the App Store is? This is another question I would be interested in asking, and or more of a conversation about. And it sort of brings us back to the question about political contributions. They donate on policy. They lobby on policy, not on politics. I don't believe other people are necessarily keeping to that sort of fine line, or keeping on the what I would personally consider the right side of that divide. It can't be coincidence that Republican legislators across the country are going to state houses and introducing things that are good for Epic. It is just, I don't want to say it's impossible, but it's unfathomable to me that this is just Epic saying, well, now have you really looked at the facts? Because it's not being presented from both sides. It's being handed to somebody which they're turning over for reasons that are unclear. What plans are in place to ensure that all employees are paid equitably? Well, they're planning on paying employees equitably. That's really about, within the US, employees from underrepresented communities earn $1 for every $1 that white employees earn. This is something we examine every year, and we make changes where we need to in order to preserve it. This is, again, going back to the storytelling stuff. Could you give us your description of Apple's identity? It's been a long time since it was Apple Computer. Who is Apple now? How do we see Apple in relation to society moving forward? In so many ways, the world has changed, said Tim Cook, but I think in some really fundamental ways, Apple has not. Apple is made up of people who want to spend their lives making things that enrich the lives of others, that make them more creative, more fulfilled. We want to do things that make us proud because life is too short to do anything else. In practice, that means being comfortable saying no to a lot of things and staying laser focused on the areas where we know we can make the greatest impact. It means innovating relentlessly and working together across teams without pride or ego, and thinking really deeply about both the opportunities and the consequences of the things we make. Apple is about technology made by people and for people, and with people's well being in mind. At its best and most hopeful, technology should help us leave the world better than we found it. I give him grief for not making news, but if you pitch one right over the center of the plate, he's going to knock it out of the park. Did the same thing with challenges ahead for 2021. What do you see as the most challenging obstacles ahead for this year? Well, frankly, I don't see obstacles as much as opportunities, he said. Don't you hate that? Don't you hate that? And yet it's a great answer. Well, frankly, I don't see obstacles as much as opportunities. Make no mistake, it's opportunities that we'll have to manage creatively, intelligently, and diligently as a business. We're not taking them for granted. Really, we're excited about them. Looking across the product lineup, I don't think we've ever had a better set of products with a greater degree of future potential. Whether you look at the first iteration of the iPhone or getting M1 chips into the hands of our users, and the remarkable ability of Apple Watch to look out for our health, and the way that all these devices are deeply integrated with the software that brings them to life, and a growing portfolio of services that our users love and depend on. Almost a year ago, at the beginning of the COVID-19 pandemic, I said that I don't think there's ever been a more challenging environment in which we've operated Apple as a business. A year later, I do think you have to pause and say, wow, the degree to which all of our teams everywhere across the globe pulled together, rose to the occasion, helped each other through it. I don't think you could hope for more than that. You certainly couldn't ask for it. So after the year we have all gone through, I am greatly optimistic about the future. And for all of us at Apple, we're thinking deeply, as always, about how we can help our communities emerge from this stronger, how recovery from this pandemic can be fair and equitable, and how all of that can be helped by a world-class technology that puts our humanity at its heart. Rhetoric. And that's not a bad word. Great stories can change the world. There's a reason that the next generation is my Star Trek, and that the original series is my second best Star Trek, because it's stories like that. It's things like that. And you're still going to get stories about Apple is investigating Foxconn for worker abuses right now. But you know what's good news? It's Apple investigating Foxconn, not China Watch. And I'm sure China Watch is looking at it too, but Apple is investigating Foxconn right now because it needs to be better. There are stories of kids mining cobalt in African countries that are being, turned over as part of, held up as ways that Apple is still trading in conflict minerals. Lately, we know more about that story because Apple talks about it more than anybody else. Apple says they don't do that. They say they try not to do that. They say they're trying to avoid doing that, all that stuff. If they keep telling those stories, it kind of puts other companies in the position of having to tell those stories too. And I'm not saying that's why they do it. It's one of the greatest things. I personally think it's one of the greatest things that Tim Cook has ever said. Great stories can change the world. And I think that's true on TV. I think it's true in books, in music, and in life, and in calls like this one. So yeah, I'm kind of bummed that there was no news. I'm kind of bummed that we didn't get any. Well, you didn't hear it from me, but at the same time, I like the fact that they're there to reinforce those ideas. Because the other thing that's great is he doesn't just stand there and say that Apple is great. He stands there and says, we all have to do stuff to make everything better. Kind of into that. Certainly more positive than yesterday. Anyway, that is more actually that I'm going to talk about on tomorrow's edition of macOS Ken Live. Probably I won't do a whole lot on the questions that were asked or the answers that were given, because there's really not a lot of news there, and there's a lot of other news out there as well. So thank you for being here for this. If you have any thoughts on the questions that were asked, if you have any thoughts, I know some of you were actually there. I know some of you were on the call, so I would love to get your take on it, and I would like to put that into feedback tomorrow. So info@macosken.com is a great way to do that. INFO, info@macosken.com. You can also leave a comment on this video, but really the best thing to do is email me, info@macosken.com. Looking less and less like there is going to be an in a few minutes this week, but macOS Ken does roll on. That'll be there for you tomorrow morning, piping hot and ready to go. Got a really exciting checklist planned this week as well, but I'll tell you more about that tomorrow. And of course, we will do macOS Ken live again tomorrow afternoon. And I will talk to you soon. Ba-ba-ba-ba-ba. And with that, the show's over. Wow, that's weird. Sorry. I was just reading Matthew's answer to the question. Apparently, Greg Allman and Red Fox knew each other. I mean, there's no reason they wouldn't. Anyway. Neat. That's actually kind of cool. Media Cafe says, I'm listening to the show on my HomePod Mini, and you sound much better than on the cheap speakers I was using. I'm sure you're excited to know that. I don't think I've actually tried listening to my podcasts on either my HomePod or my HomePod Mini. I have no idea how I sound, so thank you very much for letting me know. I actually do appreciate it. Excellent. Webb says he was at the virtual stockholders meeting. Webb, if you have a couple of thoughts that you would like to send to me, I would love to share them with people. So please feel free. Sorry. Yeah, it was. Yeah, okay. Anyway. Show's over. Now more fun, says Donna. I've actually got I've got an interview. I'll go ahead and tell you guys now. This is really boring for people watching the video later, by the way, because it's just me reading. Patrick Wardle is back on. We're talking about malware in the M1 Max because he found Go Search 22, which is that adware. He found that first one, and then he did some comments on Red Sparrow, Silver Sparrow, found by Red Canary. So we're going to talk about that, and then talk about some of the implications for malware on the M1 as well. Where else were we? Wow, you just freaked me out, Matthew. I thought you were saying that Cher was married to Red Fox. Yes, Cher was married to Greg Allman. I didn't know that. Does Ken's voice have more bass? I think the question is more bass than what? I know you're talking about on the HomePod Mini. One Password has a podcast? I had no idea. Yes, Gary. Patrick's going to be on for the checklist, so that'll be on Thursday's show. I did not know, honestly, that 1Password had a podcast. I might have to check that out. Patrick's a really cool guy. I can't remember the first time I interviewed him. It was close to a year ago, I think, and he's been very giving of his time, and he's also just a lot of fun to talk to and incredibly knowledgeable. So there you go. All right. On all those happy notes, I'm going to get out of here, turn what we just did into a show that other people can download, and then go talk to Patrick. I'll tell him that you guys said hey, and gals, people and more people. Oh, okay. Frank says 1Password also has a YouTube channel. Far out. Everybody's got a YouTube channel. That's cute. Eugene says 1Password has a podcast, but it's encrypted. I assume he also intentionally did the exclamation point instead of the one as a password joke. I could be wrong, though. Thank you very much, Webb. I appreciate it. And yeah, I'll bring that. I'll bring that back here tomorrow, so you can cut out early. All right. All right. All right. I'm gone. Take care, guys. I'll talk to you soon. Ciao.